Welcome to Sustainability Now, solutions to shape a world that works. Designed for everyone interested in responsible stewardship of the planet, covering food, energy, housing, water, waste, health, economics, and consciousness. Welcome to your community, Sustainability Now, with your host, Mira Rubin.
Welcome, everybody, to Sustainability Now, technologies and paradigms to shape a world that works. I'm your host, Mira Rubin, and I am delighted to introduce you to Brett and Kira Belan of Solarrolla, a family-owned business whose specialty is building vehicles that are 100% electric drive and powered by the sun. Brett grew up with a wrench in his hand, spending much of his teenage years building and hot rodding classic American cars. With a mechanical engineering degree and stints at both Ford and Jaguar, Brett and Kira took their talents to off-grid living. And Brett went on to build his first electric vehicle, a solar-powered electric Volkswagen bus. He removed the old gas engine, installed a new electric motor, built the battery box and the solar array rack, and he and Kira custom made the pop-up tent and camper features. That summer in 2016, Brett and Kira and their two kids traveled 1,400 miles along the Oregon and California coasts, wholly powered by the sun. 2 years later, in 2018, they started Solarrolla, building a number of solar electric vehicles, including a vintage VW bus and E-Star camper van for the musician Red Foo, solar trailer power stations, golf carts, a four-wheeler, snowmobile, tractor, and even a solar-powered lawnmower. Solarrolla continues not only to build vehicles, but also alternative energy systems on their northern Wisconsin homestead. I am so delighted to be with you and to have the opportunity to share what you're up to in the world. I don't know anybody else that's doing what you're doing.
Good to be here. Thanks, Mira.
Yeah.
Welcome, welcome. So we've had multiple conversations because this is a passion of mine. And one of the things that was one of my biggest takeaways is that not only do you have the technology foundation and background to be able to accomplish this, but you've been walking the talk. You've done this with your family. You've traveled just by the power of the sun. And what my biggest takeaway is that it's a lifestyle, that there's more to it than just technology, but that there's a whole reorientation to living.
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
think that would be a great place for us to start.
Cool. Yeah, it is very different. And although we have traveled predominantly by the sun, we do plug in. So that's kind of how we segue between the normal world, if you will, and this new world of really paying attention to nature and going when she says go and hanging out when she says hang out. So these vehicles do have the ability to plug in, and they are really fun just to bounce between campgrounds. A campground will have usually a 50 amp outlet that you can, plug in, and by the time morning comes around, you take your next cruise. So there's a couple different ways to do it. And of course, you can do a little of both. My goal is to be able to, travel exclusively on the sun, but it is a challenge because it's a very different consciousness there. You really have to slow down. You take what you can get. But with a camper idea, it works pretty well because normally, we don't camp in sub-zero temperatures. So first of all, we tend to travel south in the winter. So that lends itself to the solar energy. And also, when you're camping, you like to spend a couple days somewhere. And so that there lends itself to, getting the solar charge you need. to keep going. We did put an Australian kid on this path, Route del Sol project, and yeah, he was surfing and partying and having a good time, and said that he was pretty much always charged up when he was ready to go. So the idea would be that you know, of course, want to stop in places that you know, have exciting geography and culture, and take your time enjoying that and matriculating with people. And that usually takes a few days. So it's that pace, which is probably much like our ancestors in wagons and such, that that you start going on. But I think a pace that is much quicker than that, you miss out on a lot of the beauty of life.
Well, I think it's a very interesting proposition because so many of us are on the go, and more of us are looking at a digital nomad sort of lifestyle, but
Mhm.
we still have constraints that we have to contend with. I'm
Right.
wondering, what are you finding to be the biggest limiters in well, I also want to talk about converting, but Brett's looking to you, Kira. So
Go
how about
ahead.
you chime in?
Um, I would say time. Time is probably the biggest limiter, is just having the time to, you know, if it's not sunny, wait for the sun to come out, or even if it is sunny, wait the amount of time that it takes to charge up. Often we get into these situations where we're building for a client and we're delivering it to that client, and they want their vehicle and we want to, you know, test it and drive it and get lots of footage, and but you know, they're kind of waiting. So we do a combination of plugging in and solar charging just to get, because it's often quite a distance that we're bringing these vehicles. So I would say, you know, time is probably, you know, the biggest constraint in it, but it's perfect for someone that is more of a digital nomad that works from their vehicle, that has a Starlink or internet or doesn't need that. So they can really, you know, just be out in the desert or in a beautiful place for, you know, a few days and then go to their next spot without as many constraints. But then there always is that option if, you know, if they need to get somewhere for a meeting or they need to get to a certain place by a certain time, you can plug in. So it's kind of, you know, we try and do as much as we can solar, but sometimes, you know, we have life commitments or the weather's not cooperating, and so there is that option. But it's, you know, it's a good step towards being as sustainable. And if you don't have those time constraints, you really can have that freedom to charge wherever you want to be.
Beautiful. So you talked about slowing down. What kind of distance do you get on a charge? Like if you have your batteries full, what are we looking at in terms of travel distance?
Well, we, of course, build a couple different types of vehicles. Um, our VW buses, we usually don't want to put the weight of of much more than what would give us 100 miles of range. So the VW buses are about 100 miles of range. The VW bus we built for Redfoo, which had slide out, you know, solar awnings on each side, was capable of pulling up to like 100 miles a day. So when we were delivering that vehicle, we stopped at Kira's parents, and yeah, we pulled enough to travel 100 miles a day on the flats. So, you know, if you're going uphill and you've got different challenges like that, you'll see a little bit less range. But in general, you know, as we increase in size, so then we've built larger vehicles that do 200 miles of range, but still pull about 100 miles of range. So that seems to be generally what the maximum is going to be. Now, if you want to
Wait,
bring,
wait, wait. You just said vehicles that pull 200 miles, but then, or are capable of 200, but pull 100. I don't, can
so
you?
the range of the battery pack, so if you have a full battery, you can go 200 miles.
Okay.
But if you want to charge off the sun on a particular day, you'll pull up to 100 miles of that range. So you can charge, in that scenario, half of your battery pack per day.
So it takes a day to
Right,
charge up enough
right,
to go. When you're
right.
saying a day, what are we really talking about in terms of hours?
You want to get that sun coming right off the horizon and follow it all the way down. I mean, that's the idea. So if you spend, the idea would be you spend a minimum of 2, 3 sunny days in a location, depending on how far you want to go to your next destination. But you pull out your awnings and you set up your camp and you enjoy the area and let it charge, and however long it takes, it takes.
So what is it that's creating that limitation? Maybe give us a brief overview of the mechanics
Right.
of this whole thing, because
Well, the limitation is really only patience, because you can bring enough solar panels to charge up in a single day. You could charge that 200-mile battery pack. You could charge it up in one day if you were willing to deploy the panels. So the panels are lightweight enough, and they take up a pretty small amount of space. So what I've looked at as far as maximums is right about 200 miles in a day that you could pull. So if you're bringing panels to do more than that, then it can start to be cumbersome volume-wise, cumbersome weight-wise. But really, it's like these panels are so lightweight that you can bring a ton of them. So then it's just a question of deployment, right? So you're going to need to take these panels off a rack in the back of the vehicle or something of that nature and spread them out in the sun. But as far as, the weight and the volume, it's not a problem. So what we do is, we create a situation where you have what we call wings, which is basically your awning on each side. And that to me is kind of the sweet spot as far as, anything more than that, now you're really, taking a lot of time and energy to deploy. So this can be pretty quick, 15 minutes, half an hour. We're designing tops now, which will be automated and, set themselves up in seconds. But we still have a little bit of design time and a little bit of back and forth and probably a few revisions. We just picked up yesterday the prototype for the smaller vehicles. And then we'll be building the awnings off of that one. So it's quite a bit of engineering to really make it, because as I said, it's a deployment, patience kind of issue. So the more we can automate it so that you just press your button and your panels get out there in the sun and they automatically track the sun, that's when you're going to really start getting a lot of miles.
So we're looking, the limiter in this case is surface area to be
Right.
able to collect the
Right.
sun, and also batteries to store the energy.
Right. Yeah.
Have you done any kind of supplementation with wind?
We haven't. It's definitely been something that we talk about, but we haven't yet.
Because I imagine, not being an engineer, I don't know if my imaginings have any grounding in reality, but I imagine that as you're driving, you could have some kind of wind turbine that is charging batteries.
Yes,
I mean, is that reasonable to imagine?
it is. As long as that turbine doesn't create drag,
Mhm.
which would pretty much negate anything you're gaining.
Gotcha.
So if you put the turbine, like what we've considered, if you put the turbine in front of the vehicle, because the vehicle
Right.
is already pushing a lot of air. So
Right.
it's not that you're necessarily creating more drag. If you can create a turbine that possibly even reduces your drag and also can charge batteries, I mean, you always have a minimum 40, 50 mile an hour wind, which is a serious wind for a wind power. So yeah, that's something. What I'll probably do to test that out is just, how the VW buses had like a spare tire on the front?
Yeah.
I'm gonna just put one of the small wind turbine that I have here on the front of the VW and do a little bit of testing. I think that'll be fun. And it'll look
I think
crazy
that,
too. So
and then the limiter moves from surface area to battery storage, yeah?
yeah, I mean, what we've found also with our Tesla is like 200 miles of range is a pretty good figure. Now, of course, we all want more, but 200 miles of range will serve you. It takes care of your needs to get, a good chunk of driving in. And you know, of course, with the campers, you have your kitchen and your bed and your bathroom and your shower. So, you know, that lends itself to spending more time in the vehicle, in the sun, versus say if you had solar panels on your car, it wouldn't be nearly as the same situation sitting in
Yeah.
the sun waiting for it to charge.
And
Well,
do
it
solar,
becomes a weight issue with the batteries. So it's like, you know, like he was saying with the VW bus, there's only a certain amount that chassis and frame and everything can handle. Same with the bigger sprinter size vehicles, the E-Stars. It's like they are made as delivery vehicles, so they are built a little heavier duty and they have a bigger payload. But still, you get to that point where you're adding so much weight that it takes a toll on the suspension and the components and the drive and everything. So that's kind of the other, you know, but battery technology is like constantly changing rapidly.
Yeah.
So, you know, as they get lighter, I mean, even, you know, the difference of lithium versus lead is incredible as far as weight and storage and everything. So yeah, I think that, you know, once that weight starts coming down, you know, it would be possible to get more range out of it as well.
yeah, I mean, graphene technology, and there's liquid crystal batteries that
Mhm.
people are developing. I think it's really exciting. We're going to see some big changes, I imagine, as all that emerges. So, Brett, maybe you could just, I'm saying Brett because I'm presuming that you're doing the mechanical stuff of the conversion. Just to give us an idea, what does that entail and what kind of cost is it and why isn't anybody else doing it?
Well, it's not easy. Now, first thing, it's, you know, when you're putting together a 400-volt battery pack, one false move and you're dead. So that can be somewhat of a deterrent.
Not a
And
minor detail.
I mean, just having batteries in your shop, you know, I have so many batteries in my shop, and you have to be careful because if a wrench falls on them, or you know, or just if they get too cold and they get charged under 30, I mean, there's so many, they're pretty sensitive. They need a pretty serious management system on them to make sure that they don't go out of whack in this direction or that direction, and either become a hazard or just plain die. But the new technologies are pretty much doing away with any of that. So it is exciting to see the cycle life, like starting to get up there in your solar panels, right? Where you're starting to be able to see 10, 15 years of power without a lot of change in performance. But like you said, the technology is really changing. And fortunately, there's a lot of push for, you know, safer batteries. So like some of the newer batteries, they have no thermal runaway issues. So there's no worry of them ever catching fire. And their cycle life is incredible. So they're really long lasting. They don't have cobalt in them and other metals that, number one, are toxic. But the salt batteries, in fact, there's a plant now here in Michigan, not too far from us, that is building the salt batteries. So they're replacing the lithium with salt, which of course will eliminate the mining. And that's, of course, a sore spot for a lot of people, understandably.
And I imagine, do you know if it would make it more recyclable also?
Yeah. Well, the recycling is actually pretty good. Now, because the batteries, especially like the Tesla situation, because the batteries are lasting quite a while, there hasn't been a lot of demand for recycling. But that, of course, as time goes on, will come. And there is a gentleman, his YouTube channel is Jerry Rig Everything. He visits a battery recycling plant in Arizona, and it's pretty amazing. They're getting almost 90% of those elements back.
Wow, that's
So the
wonderful.
recycling potential is really there. However, I got a pile of lithium batteries, honestly, behind my shed that I'm trying to find, but the recycling, there's just not a demand for it just yet. So it's still, I mean, I would have to pay
Yeah.
to get rid of these, an amount that I'm not comfortable with just
They're
yet.
heavy because you got to ship them to
Yeah,
Arizona
right,
or wherever these
right.
plants are. So it's like you're paying to recycle them.
It shows
Yeah.
just how new this whole equation really is. I mean, you think about the gasoline engines, diesel engines, and the 100 years that they've had to develop. And where are we with electric? 20? I mean, serious development, maybe not even that. So you
It
get
was
that.
curtailed. When cars first started, they were electric.
Yeah, exactly.
Just imagine where we would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even Edison created a battery called the Edison cell. I had the opportunity to test some of them, but they were basically forever batteries. You could change the electrolyte, which was like potassium, a potassium mixture, and there was an iron and a nickel, terminal. So yeah,
Why
amazing
not recreate
technology.
those?
They were kind of heavy. In other words,
Oh,
their energy density
got
would
it.
make it difficult to, get the kind of range. But the thing is, Mira, we're always kind of trying to support the mentality of gas with electric. And
Right.
to me, that's what I'm trying to get away from.
Yeah.
Because if we're always judging our situation based on, fossil fuels, and the fossil fuel model is not a really good model in the first place, well, then what are we really judging it by? So my philosophy is, that's why I talk a lot about consciousness, because range anxiety is a psychological, reality, and it is basically a mind that is addicted to the performance of gasoline. And when you start to not get that performance, you start to have withdrawals. And those
Sure.
withdrawals come in giving your, fellow driver the bird or whatever it is. And that's just a natural reaction to, not having what you're used to having, and so if you're going to have a Solarrolla and you're going to relax and charge when you can and move when the sun shines, you're going to have to get through that. And so
Yeah.
to me, this whole equation, it's as much of a spiritual journey as it is a technology thing.
I think that that's a factor of time, though, in this moment, because my guess is that the technology is emergent that will allow us to provide the equivalent of the flexibility that we have with fossil fuel.
Right.
In the meantime, I love that it's a spiritual journey. Like I get the value of being able to kind of exit the chaos of our churn and burn society,
Churn and
literally,
burn. Well put.
right?
Well, what we're doing is, I think your channel is Sustainability Now. And if you want to talk about sustainability, I think if we want to have sustainability, we have to put nature back in charge. In
I
other
love it.
words, let the sun tell you how much you drive today, not your boss. Get another job. Maybe you don't need a job if you don't have to pay that mortgage because you've decided to take off in this vehicle. So it's a real shift of lifestyle that I think is necessary if we really want to be sustainable. We, of course, want to have our cake and eat it too, right? We want our planet to be green, but we also want to run around all coffeeed up and in circles. So those two things don't seem to really work well together.
I love that this is calling us to reassess our values, because
Yeah,
that's really what we need planet-wide to be able to become the stewards that we need to be, is to reassess our values. And I think that we get so wrapped up in the craziness of doing and all our scheduling that we don't even question it so often. So,
right. It just
you know,
is. Yeah.
beautiful to be able to do that. I want to pull back around to get a little bit more of a technical idea how this works. Now, you can convert any vehicle, if let me know if I'm overstating, to solar. I'm wondering, what's the difference between converting an EV so that it can be fully solar and still have the option to plug in, and a fossil fuel or a gas or diesel engine? What's the
Right.
difference? And what would the difference be in cost?
Right. So the biggest challenge with a production EV, in other words, a vehicle that is already electric, is how do we get the solar in without it confusing some of the electronics that are meant to observe, charge coming in, charge going out. Of course, solar can be intermittent, wind can be intermittent. And so you end up, unless you have a battery system, like a intermediate battery system to kind of smooth out that power, the vehicles aren't built just yet. And I'm thinking in the next 5 years, we will have solar inputs on the vehicles. It's not that difficult to do. It's just not being done yet. But without that solar input, you're having to dig in there and try to charge the vehicle that is designed to have a certain protocol for charging. It's designed to kind of, you plug into your grid and it kind of senses what kind of power level that charger can provide. So just the way it's handled right now is not conducive to solar. So I do prefer to build the entire vehicle, because then I can design it right from the ground up to be one that efficiently receives the solar energy. So
That's
literally
a really surprising answer, actually.
Yeah. But I think, like I said, I think it will be coming soon. Like I'm noticing now, like a lot of the electric trucks coming out, they have an inverter, so you can use them as a power station. Well, that's pretty new. That's, and eventually where this all is going to go, and I can pretty much guarantee it because of how much sense it makes, but we're going to have the ability to feed energy to the grid. We're going to have the ability to take energy from the grid. And if you can imagine, when we add solar power to the vehicles, now instead of taking a field out there and blanketing it with solar panels, there is potentially a mandate on every electric vehicle to have, say, 300 watts of solar. Well, now the parking lots are solar fields.
Wow.
And there's no, yeah, exactly. So now there's no, it's seamless to get that energy into the grid, to sharing it. But of course, again, it's like, it's not necessarily true that we don't have the technology. As human beings, we have to get there consciously. We have to get to the point where we can share energy, and how is that all going to go? And this guy's greedy and this person's giving too much. And then it becomes that, so it's all there. So as human beings, we just have to grow, and we have to organize, and we have to work together, if we really want to be living in tune with nature.
So you just spurred a whole bunch of new questions, but I want to dig a little deeper into the technology. So the thing that was so surprising about your answer around the EVs is they already have the drivetrain.
Right.
They already don't have the gas tank. They don't have the combustion engine. So, and that's the limit of my automotive understanding there. But can you tell us, if we're looking at cost, if we have the thing that I love about this, because you and I we've all been talking about what it would be to build an eco van. This is like one of my dreams, is that you could take any vehicle and it could be a vehicle where the engine doesn't run, and convert it. And I guess I want to have an understanding of what the conversion entails, not just for me, but for people listening who might be really attracted to this idea. You have to replace it, like, give us an idea of what kind of reconfiguring you need to do to the vehicle, and what kind of expense we'd be looking at.
So I'll talk about the conversion. You start thinking about expense. She's the
Well, we're super custom, so expense is always a big variable as to what vehicle, how much range you want, how much solar you want, if you want an interior, what kind of interior. So there are a lot of variables there.
So I'm just wanting to get an idea for something that isn't including the interior, because the interior itself could be well over, it could be nominal, or it could be hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's not uncommon for a Sprinter interior to be 100,000 on its own.
Right.
So, I mean, the thing is, because these are campers, the prices start really high. I mean, this is not a commuter. This is not a Honda Civic. It is a 15,000-pound home power station on wheels.
Right.
So it's an office
Wait,
space.
wait, let me just stop you there, because you said power station twice, and I really, while I have it in my brain, I really want to address this idea of, I love the vision that you had about eventually we're all going to be driving these power stations if we're driving. But what, like, let's talk about that and how important and impactful that is at this time when there are so many natural crises. And
Exactly. Yeah.
so would you just riff on that a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you could have your solar powered recreational vehicle and be complaining about it not, okay, you had a cloud come over or two and you didn't charge enough. Well, that's only in comparison to having other opportunities. If you have no other sources of power, all of a sudden, this thing is a godsend. So it's all perspective. In fact, with the LA fires, Red Foo put his family and all his dogs in the E-Star that we built for him and took off. So that was a vehicle then that he could park in the sun. Now, he did forget to bring his awning panels.
Oops.
So his place didn't burn, fortunately, so he was able to pick him up. But, and you do need those awning panels to really pull enough power to make it worthwhile in a vehicle that big.
Yeah.
But as a power station, it's so important. I mean, a lot of our trailers and even our golf carts, they're made to back up. They're made to back up your home. They're made to back up your freezer and your fridge, because it is really, it's happening. Let's face it, it's just happening.
But
And
these
so,
could be emergency support vehicles
yeah,
too, right? Like,
So, yeah, Red Foo has used his multiple times. It's sitting in his driveway. It's charging all the time. He doesn't drive it every day, so it's often sitting there. But his power, he's in an area where there's a lot of fires lately, and the power's going out. So he's charged his entire house, like large house, off of the E-Star. He's charged certain things off of the golf cart that we built him. So it's been a good backup system for people if the grid goes down. We've talked a lot about, I'm from California, so I've got family there. We lived there for a while, and the fires are just out of control. And we're not like that when I was growing up, and things are very different. And so, and then even with all the hurricanes and flooding, these vehicles could really come in and bring medical equipment, bring, even if it's just power for someone to charge their cell phone to be able to call their family. And they could be set up however you want inside. So
Yeah.
that's been a big topic, is these kind of survival emergency vehicles for people, because you can charge a vehicle off of it as well. So like Red Foo
Wow.
has charged his Tesla and his Rivian off of that E-Star. So
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's an incredible vision, to be able to imagine not only can we be self-sufficient, but we can also be able to support folks who are in need and in danger even. That's amazing. And I wanna, we'll come back around eventually, but this vision that you had about the parking lot being charging sort of stations or solar stations to create energy. I'm wondering if we can segue from that into your vision for what's possible, because you two are visionaries. You're kind of going back to the roots, but you're also pushing the envelope of our evolution. And I just wanted to address that with you a little bit.
yeah, go ahead.
this is your department.
Well, it's just when things make sense, they make sense. And I give it 10 years and that will be happening, because it just makes too much sense.
If we still have autonomous vehicles, or, you know, like, or even if we do have our own individuated transportation vehicles, right?
Right. So then everybody's kind of contributing, connected through energy, on a real obvious level besides what's happening in other ways. So,
Yeah.
and then the communications as well. Like if you have remote power and your Starlink, you're worldwide communicating, and communication is everything.
Yeah.
So connecting the world and having reliable power is two wings of the bird.
I love it. I love it. And let's go back to the technical piece. So what does it even mean to replace a drivetrain? Just to give us a little bit of a mechanical view of
I
it.
worked for Ford and I worked for Jaguar, and they're companies and they have a bottom line, and certain parts are made to last for certain periods of time. And that always bothered me a little bit. I understand, you're trying to cut costs, you're trying to make things affordable. I'm not going to point any fingers just yet, but I want to create forever vehicles because I see the potential of that with these vehicles. Okay, your regenerative braking, you don't even go through brake pads, and these are huge vehicles. So there's really nothing to fail. And as that battery technology, as we've seen through some of Tesla's data, they're going 10, 12 years before there's any drop in performance. So you're talking about a vehicle that really shouldn't require too much maintenance. But, whenever something happens to my Tesla and I got to take it to the dealer, 200 miles away. And so building the entire vehicle myself gives me the ability to really hone in on why I'm doing this in the first place. And it's sustainability, but it's also freedom. And if you can't have something fixed by a local shop and you got to go to this special place and you got to plug in this special tool, it takes the freedom aspect away. If you're married to this company and they're doing updates over the internet constantly. And so I'm trying to design the vehicle as absolutely simple and efficiently as possible so that I can maximize that result.
So just for those of us who are automechanically impaired.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
What
didn't quite answer that.
exactly is a drivetrain, and
So,
how
right.
I mean, like, the things that you're replacing, what are you actually doing to
Right,
convert a vehicle?
right. So obviously we're going to pull the gasoline motor out. And many times the transmission, so you have your engine, which creates the power, and then your transmission directs that power to your wheels. So
Okay.
you may need to, put some gears in there to get the right speeds and to get the right power, and stuff like that. So many times all I have to do is take the gasoline motor out, and there are a lot of manufacturers now coming out with adapter plates that fit some of the motors available. So you literally just bolt this adapter plate on, bolt your electric motor on, and now of course you have to find somewhere to put the batteries. So you have, of course, the gas tank is going to come out. So there's a large area there. And then the rest of the vehicle, your lights, your turn signals, your hazards, your brakes, all those electrical components can stay the same, because you still need brakes, you still need your power steering, you still need all your lights and all of your what tends to be your 12 volt, or your low voltage system in a vehicle. All that stuff remains. So basically, we just need to replace that gas motor with an electric motor and find a place for the batteries. And then, of course, when we add the solar, that goes up top and is wired into the battery.
Okay, thank you for that little tutorial.
Yeah, I
Appreciate
hear
it.
you.
So, Kira, as I understand it, you're kind of the designer.
Yeah, as far as like interior, interior design, all the camping features,
Paint,
painting,
outside.
cosmetic. I mean, pretty much, Brett goes in and makes things work. And then I go through and I'll like split loom all the wires and make everything, covered and look nice and safe. And
Kira does a lot more wiring than she lets on. She does most of the low voltage wiring. So like, lights and stuff like that. She'll add, nice accent lights and add little bells and whistles here and there. And she's wiring all that. And then also, she may not be turning on the 400-volt systems, but she's also putting relays and stuff together in that system too. So
And
she's
like the battery management systems, soldering wires and
she's
sorts
she's
of-
yeah, she's
I do
basically
a lot of fabricating, I guess, as well, just with like metal brackets, and Brett will be like, all right, make 10 of these. Okay. So,
I tend to just want to control anything where there's something dangerous. So, but when it comes down to it, we pretty much do the same stuff. She does fabrication, she does wiring, she does paint, she does interior. She's bolting and screwing and putting things together, and she's on the tools, and she's grinding and she's drilling and she's table saw and chop saw, and so she's there pretty
That's
much doing
awesome.
everything.
he's got,
delighted to
he's got the degree and he's got the car know-how. So yeah, it's we both
Beautiful.
do our own things.
I simply have done it more.
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty much true of anyone that you look at and say, wow, they're a genius. They've just done it a lot. It's not that they're, any more talented. It's just that, focus and getting to know something and doing it year after year is how you become the master,
Well,
and I'm still not anywhere near that.
I'm sorry, say it again.
And I still have a long ways to go to really master a lot of these systems. So.
Well, it's still emergent.
Right.
And something that I really appreciate about you two is that you're pushing the envelope. So you're staying on top of what's emerging and what the evolution is. And so the other thing that I find really exciting about you both and the prospect of working with you is your commitment to making sure that your customers understand the vehicle, so that it goes back to sort of that independence that you were talking about, not having to go to the mechanic necessarily, but to be able to know how things are wired and to be able to know what might need to be able to troubleshoot some things. And you go a long way to make sure that that happens, as far as I understand. So
yeah, like for example, Red Foo, he cruised out of his his home area because of the fires, but he had a situation where he couldn't find a charger because the power was off. So I was able to walk him through connecting his laptop to the BMS, connecting his laptop to the motor controller, and getting another 30 miles out of the system. So I tend to design it conservatively, because if you don't discharge your batteries all the way down and you don't charge them to the tippy top, their lifetime goes up exponentially. So I tend to, put all the set points to reflect that. But if you're in an emergency situation, call me up and I'll give you another 30 miles. And it's something that you could do. You plug in your laptop, you bring up your little putty program. I say, all right, here's this screen, here's the command. Send me a screenshot so I know that you did it right, and then you're off and running, and so we can make those kind of updates, and then of course, God forbid, if there's any kind of a problem, I can say, hey, look in this and see what this is saying, and do a lot of troubleshooting over the phone or a Zoom call. But ultimately, we're building a larger van right now, one that we've kind of always dreamed of building. And if I have my way, we'll be traveling around in this vehicle doing support. Like right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I'll be, and then God forbid, one day someone will take that over, right? And there'll be multiple vehicles cruising around doing support, because they can just be charging off the sun and meandering around. And God forbid, if someone's in real urgency, plug in, get to them, fix the situation. And then, of course, as I mentioned, building it simple enough so that, an average mechanic, these are all basic systems, really. I mean, there are parts that are, state of the art and need to be handled kind of uniquely. But for the most part, we got gearboxes and motors and, fluids, and it's pretty similar. So many of the systems remain, that can be, serviced by regular mechanics. So I'm going to be going to Redfoo to see Redfoo. I tend to go out there every few months and do a tweak or two on the vehicle. Of course, Redfoo is really fun to hang out with, and we get in all kinds of trouble.
I'll
But
bet you do.
yeah, but I mean, I love it. So to me, it's a vacation, and getting in the flagship vehicle and solar powering out to you to field a glitch. To me, that doesn't sound like work.
Gotcha.
I
Gotcha.
get to, and that's why I really also want to develop relationships, because the people that are driving these vehicles, they're early adopters. It's like there's not it's like if you had a used sailboat lot. You're not going to just go buy a sailboat. You need to know about it. How does it work? How do I not die? It's like and these vehicles, there's a lot going on. And there are some big awnings, they're big vehicles, right? So like I said, as a power station and a rolling home, you have house maintenance and your water pump went out. And so it's not just electrical stuff. It's just basic maintenance that needs to be done on anything from a house to a power station to a car.
Yeah. Yeah. So it takes something of a pioneering spirit, I guess.
Right. And I mean, if you're the kind of person who can push through some of those psychological barriers of, hey, I'm not getting enough range, or it's not similar enough to what I'm used to, then it may not be for you. But if you understand that growth can be uncomfortable and you want growth, then that you're in the right place with us.
So if you were to charge one of these vehicles by plugging it in, what kind of time are you looking at to?
Well, right now, for example, Redfoo's vehicle, it ended up going a little bit over time as far as building it. And he wanted the vehicle. We had planned on putting fast charging in, but we ended up just doing kind of a regular J1772. So I think that ended up being about a 12, 14-hour charge. So kind of an overnight thing, campground. So the campground doesn't really give you any more than 10 kilowatts of energy anyway. And your 200 miles of range is about, 150 to 180 kilowatt hours. So that would be 15 to 18 hours to charge it full.
Wow.
So if you were to use your solar in combination, you'd pretty much cut that in half.
Okay.
But the fast chargers can be put on. It's all what you want and what you need and what you can do without and all of that. And it's also about planning, because every home is a power station. You want to stop by a friend's for the evening, you can plug into their dryer outlet. If you want to go to a campground, they're all over the place. If you want to just use it, plug it in at home, of course, you have that option. So everybody's essentially a gas station. So yes, that's a long time to charge, but again, there's a lot more opportunities for that kind of charging.
Got it. So what else should I ask you? What else should I have asked, or what else do you want to?
I think we covered most everything.
It's
don't
pretty
know.
exciting.
Well-
We didn't talk dollars because
Oh, that's right. Let's talk
I
dollars.
understand
Yeah.
that it's very customized, but
Right.
I guess just so people have a clue.
Yeah. So if you're looking at like a VW bus, with that kind of 100-mile range, you're looking between like 75,000 and 100,000.
Just for the technical
And 50 to
conversion
75.
before an interior, before.
Oh,
the
yeah,
FedEx.
wait, you're saying before interior. So yeah, before interior, more like 50 to 75. So the batteries are the main cost with any of the builds. The batteries are expensive. The solar panels, depending on what we use, they are pretty pricey. The ones we used for Redfoo's E-Star, and we have some for our next E-Star, they're a carbon fiber. Light Leaf is the company. They're light, but they're rigid, which most of the other lightweight panels are flexible. So it requires doing a lot of framing and stuff. So those panels are definitely pricier, but we are kind of moving more towards, they've streamlined their process into only doing very specific panels and not doing custom anymore. So we won't be able to get our panels from them anymore. So we're going to be going kind of back to the flexible, building our own frames, which is what him and his college friend Tony have been designing these tops in CAD. Like he said, we just had it laser cut out from a place in Minneapolis and they picked it up yesterday. So we're looking forward to putting that together. So that one is for a golf cart, but the idea is it's scalable. So the next step up is the VW bus and then the E-Star, and eventually pretty much any vehicle that we could, scan, get dimensions, put it into the CAD program and build custom tops. So that's kind of what we're excited about as like more of a product instead of always doing custom one-off things. So I guess as far as VW buses, that kind of 50 to 75,000. And then the E-Stars, again, it really depends on what you want. Those can go from 100,000 to 250.
Now that's with the interior or before the interior?
So like Red Foos was about 260 total, and his had just a super basic interior, which was like 3 windows, insulation, paneling, and seats.
Wow.
So that was, they plan to like do a more in-depth interior down the road potentially. So
Gotcha.
that was just basic.
It's
Okay.
like all of this alternative energy stuff, it's money up front. So if you go and you look to buy a Sprinter, you gotta run the numbers for 4 years of gas. You got to run the number for a few years of what you're going to spend on gas. And that, of course, is potentially not involved. And even if you calculate the energy costs, I think with our Tesla, we're still paying about 1/3 to 1/2 of what we would be spending if we were driving a gas vehicle. So right there, you're ahead. If you use your solar, you get even further ahead. And really, if you go look at, an equivalent size Sprinter, we're not all that different in price. So like our base model E-Star, no interior, no solar at all, just an electric delivery van, will start at about 100 grand. And then it goes up from there to about 125 with the solar. And that would be just a small amount of solar, just the top covered. So maybe like pulling 30 miles a day. And that would be, like I said, 100 miles of range. And using the original motor in that vehicle, which was kind of weak if you start putting too many batteries in. So once you increase the number of batteries, you gotta, beef up your drivetrain, bigger motor now to move more weight around. The suspension has to be able to handle the weight. The transmission now needs to handle more power. And so it goes up from there pretty quickly. But
The
at some point,
E-Star, just so that people know, maybe give them a quick idea of what the E-Star
right.
is.
So the E-Star was originally an electric vehicle, but they were really problematic as far as their circuitry, and they would shut down all the time and throw errors. And it was 2012 technology, which at the time was pretty amazing, but most of those vehicles are having problems now. Now there are some people that have dug deep into them and apparently keeping them running, but you're keeping them running with a battery technology that's giving you like 100 miles and probably degrading pretty quickly at this point. So we have a visitor.
Oh,
But so the vehicles are pretty close for what you're getting. And of course, like I say, if you include the gas costs, and that's been our goal, to be pretty similar to what you would spend if you got a normal RV. So
but the thing is that it's a forever vehicle.
yeah, the idea is that it's a totally different situation.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
who's gonna be
body is
supporting it?
likely to go before the technology, it sounds like.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing to electric motors, there's really not a lot to fail there.
Yeah.
you know, and so it's not that stuff doesn't happen, but
Right. What do you think of these Amazon electric delivery trucks?
yeah, I mean, again, it's as a manufacturer, it'll be yet to be seen how well they support them, and how much the individual can do to, you know, how much freedom they offer. You know, are you going to be having to deal with the company every time, or is, you know, how much of can you plug in and observe? Like when you buy an electric vehicle, you'll see an empty to full. Okay, well, what's your motor temperature? What are your batteries voltages at? What's your battery temperature? You know, so these are the kind of things you're going to see on a Solarrolla, and you're going to be able to integrate with that vehicle and say, yeah, it's not necessarily bad, but I know that if I take my batteries down further than this, I'm losing lifetime. So like, for example, in our Tesla, there's a slider, you can say, you know, stop at 80% charge. Okay, so and that will increase your battery lifetime. But there's no way to do the other end and say, well, I only want to, you know, of course you can stop at 25% or 30%, but yeah, so it's more interactive. We're looking at a much more interactive, hands-on. It'd be like the opposite of self-driving car.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. Well, it harkens back to when people could do their own automotive maintenance. Now it's also computerized. I think that's deliberate to make it so that it's less accessible, so people have to pay maintenance and such, but this sounds like it's a much more hands-on experience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you think about electric vehicles, you know, working with the auto industry, the repair cost at some point will exceed the sticker price of the vehicle.
Yeah.
And so if you think about all of the revenue coming in for repair, you can understand why parts they might not put a lot of energy into longevity of parts.
Right.
Let's put it
Forced
that way.
obsolescence or designed obsolescence.
Right. But if we're successful, it's because the vehicle is plug and play. And also, it's like, honestly, a gasoline motor is pretty complicated with valve train and timing and ignition. Whereas an electric motor, and we all have a phone, you know, we're on our laptops right now. Everybody generally has a sense of how to plug something into their USB and pull it up. So, I mean, I think the average bear these days is more likely to understand an electric motor than they would a gasoline motor. So I think there's a lot more. And then there's forums, you know, you get online and you find out, oh, here's the manual for the BMS and here's where I plug it in. And, you know, so I think there's a lot more potential for the individual to do.
What's BMS?
Oh, the management system. Yeah.
Okay.
The battery management system.
Yeah. Okay, great. Right. Thanks. So how can people find you, follow you, support you?
Yeah, so our website is solarrolla.com. So it's SOLARROLLA. And then social media, Instagram, YouTube channel, you can subscribe there, Facebook, X, and then Patreon as well. So Patreon is a good way for people it's a subscription-based service where you pay a certain amount per month and you get like early release videos, merchandise, behind the scenes, different special updates and that sort of thing. So that's something that, if maybe you don't have the money to buy a vehicle right now, but you want to support us and, get some kind of insider information, you can do it through Patreon.
Beautiful. And so if somebody is really psyched like me and wants to get in touch with you to have a vehicle converted or designed, what's the best way to do that?
So if you go to our website, you can fill out a contact form and send that in. Otherwise, our email address is Belan, BELAN, @solarrolla.com. And so that's usually the easiest first contact is someone sends us an email or contact through the website, kind of tells us what they're interested in, and then we can go back and forth and, potentially set up a phone call or a Zoom meeting if they're serious.
Wonderful. So last chance, anything else that we missed that you want to include for people to know about?
What I want to include is that, we've talked so much about the spiritual journey of life and trying to slow down and understanding that we're missing out on things in life because we've subscribed to this, what you call it, churn and burn. And it's, it's hard to get out of that, but we all know how good it feels when we slow down and when we take a look at, each other's faces and nature. And so really, that being the essence, if you can tap into that, who needs a vehicle? So yes, the vehicles are like the ultimate expression of that. But if you join us on Patreon and you subscribe, that's what we're always talking about. That's what gets us up and gets us going in the morning. So you get that. You're getting the essence of what we're doing just by observing how we build and who we're building for. And God forbid, get a sweatshirt, get a hat, get a t-shirt. And to me, we all want this sustainability thing. We all want to know that, the beauty of nature, which is like the bosom of God, you know what I mean? In my opinion, it's going to be there for us to walk out in and to feel good and to commune. And so unless we find some kind of sustainable relationship, it's not going to be around. And then all we're going to be left with is the churn and burn. So any kind of interaction with us, that's what we're all about. And I think that's healthy for us and anyone who subscribes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think that wraps us up for today. I want to say thank you to all of our followers and our subscribers for carrying the torch and passing it along. And to my partner in Sustainability Now, Scott Billy, who's also our producer. And I invite you guys to, whoever's listening, to check us out on Patreon too, Sustainability Now. And that's it. So live your best life, love the world around you, and together we can save the world.
Thank you for listening to Sustainability Now. Visit sustainabilitynow.global to find resources related to today's program. While you're there, pledge your support by making a contribution to help us shape a world that works. And remember to subscribe, share, and follow us on social media.